Environment. I've got apologies noted from the Mayor, Councillors Bizet and McTavish and Staines. Three of them are council business, I think. Anyone want to comment on that? I'll move them from the chair. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillor McTavish, I should note, maybe here she's, if she can. Confirmation of agenda. I'd like to note that there's a new number 5, which is the alternate members. There is a new paper that I hope has been circulated and is available, I think, over there if other people haven't been able to find it. So with that addition and the renumbering, I'll move the new agenda. Seconded, Councillor Stevenson. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of interest is noted. John Wilson Drive. Mr. Minima.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Noted. Have you had any comments, Mr. Minima?
Madam Chair, no.
Questions? Councillor Vandervis.
This is a very long, straight and wide piece of road that you're proposing to reduce the speed limit from 50 down to 30 kilometres on. Is there not a safety issue that is going to come up with people falling asleep at the wheel as they try and get to the other end?
Do they have that problem in George Street?
Madam Chair, essentially with the proposal to reduce it to 30k, it's just formalising what people are doing already.
And allowing you to take action, or anyone to take, the police to take action, should anyone drive faster in an unsafe manner?
Correct. In terms of their travel speed, they are driving at what we would expect in a 30k speed limit.
Okay.
So the proposal is just to formalise what they're doing already.
Any other questions? I'll take it. The mover was Bill. Oh, sorry, you've got a question.
Well, I do actually. It's really just not in any way to get at our friends in the Fourth Estate, but would you like to comment on the report in the ODT that says a report by council staff concludes motorists are travelling too fast and the interim 50 kilometre speed limit is too high?
Oh, I've scanned over that report, but I don't have that in front of me, the exact wording.
Well, it's just that on my understanding, and it's really following up on Lee's question, but it's just, I wouldn't want it to be misunderstood, that in fact, the speed that people are travelling at is in fact an average of, I don't have 33 or 35 kilometres an hour. It's not that it's not that it's being recommended that it be reduced because they are going too fast.
Well, there's two things. One is that there are people that are going significantly faster, but they are very few, and we have that on every road in the city, whether it be 30, 50, 100. But by and large, the data that we've got, not only the data that we've got shows good compliance with what, if it was formalised as a 30k speed limit, but we've also had very few reports of having issues with speeding vehicles on John Wilson Ocean Drive.
Well, look, if I can just try again, I'm not trying to be, what I'm trying to get at here is that the reason you're able to recommend 30 kilometre speed limit is because people's average speed on the drive is only just above 30 kilometres.
Yes.
Yeah, right, that's true.
Okay. I've got one question. Is the recommendation says that this goes back to a speed limit review. At the moment, we've set it temporarily at 30 or 50?
No, it's
50.
Madam Chair, it's just sitting at 50,
okay.
which is the current legal speed
yeah.
limit.
And I know this, yeah. Okay, no, that's fine. No other questions. I've got a mover and seconder. Any debate? Councillor?
Sorry, I had one other question.
Oh, sorry, I apologise, I missed you. I thought you'd done something.
Given that there are a number of people travelling at 30k, is there a safety issue with allowing people to travel at 50k? Given that it's a very wide, straight, highly visible, no curb intrusions piece of road?
If people were travelling at 50k and they struck a pedestrian, the likelihood or the severity of the injuries would be significantly more than if they struck them at 30k.
That's okay.
Right.
I'm taking the mover and seconded. Any debate Or do you want to speak to it first, Bill? No. Councillor Ackland, sorry.
Sorry, if I could just ask one more follow-up question. If, as you say, the striking of a pedestrian at 50k is going to be more injurious than if they strike them at 30k, have you taken into account the fact that if they're travelling at 30k, they're going to be on the road for almost twice as much time and therefore have the opportunity of striking twice as many pedestrians?
I don't know that. I don't think that's sorry. I'm not going to accept that question, but amusing as it was, I'm taking it in that light. Councillor Stevenson.
Well, I would like to think that the speed limit review happens as quickly as possible. I think 30 k's makes absolute sense. It's the speed everyone's travelling at anyway, and it's relatively safe. And I think the sooner that we can formalise it, the better.
Okay, no other comments? No right of reply? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item is the alternates. Now, appreciating the snow days recently, and I just wanted to make sure I asked for this paper to look at and to ensure that staff can carry on with hearings and that we can have a clean process on the gambling and TAB policy and on the responsible camping bylaw review. This just enables that process. It's not about adding necessarily to the membership, and I appreciate the both Jinty and Andrew making themselves available, because it will mean that they'll keep themselves well versed on these issues, albeit not necessarily be needed. It just provides that if something untoward happens to the road or to ourselves, that we can carry on with the process in this triennium.
And I'm happy to move.
You'll move. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Any debate? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Submission on the Housing Accords Special Housing Areas Bill. Thank you, Hamish. Scintillating stuff. Before you start, Hamish, I'd just like to thank Hamish. This was one of those things that happened in a very, very short, 10 days, 9 full days, rather than working days, I think, to do this submission on a fairly dry topic and getting themselves up to speed and being well informed right throughout the process. And I'd like to thank you, Hamish, for all the work you did on this. It's a very big piece of work, and the import of what the government has been trying to do on this has been interesting and hard to get one's head round, really. So I appreciate that. Would you like to make some comments, Hamish?
I have nothing to add.
Mm-hmm. Any questions of Hamish? Thank you, Lee.
It's been suggested that this bill was all about the Auckland property market and that we just got swept up in it. Is that the way you see it as well, or?
Certainly the way that it was promoted, but in practice, the way it's drafted, it could capture just about any local authority in New Zealand. So I think it does have wider impact than just Auckland in practice.
So even though it might have been designed with Auckland in mind, it doesn't actually cause us any particular problems in a much smaller area like Dunedin?
Actually, the way the bill is drafted, if we meet one of two criteria regarding housing affordability, then the government would be within its power to apply the proposals under the bill to Dunedin. So, and those proposals are fairly intense.
The powers, yeah. I'm going to ask the General Manager to talk to it, and then I've got some questions.
Dunedin does in fact potentially make it into the schedule because we do meet one of the two criteria. That criteria relates to a relative proportion, a relative balance between the cost of a house and the average income of our residents, primarily because at one end of town our average income is particularly low, and regardless of whether or not the people who earn student allowances actually want to buy a house, that does, it could be argued somewhat artificially, put us over the threshold of being put into the schedule. The problem with that, as we did point out to the Minister, is that the average cost to build a house in Dunedin, according to Building and Housing's own figures, the average cost to build a 145 square metre house is actually only $16,000 less than the average Dunedin house price, and that cost is without the cost of land. So in actual fact, if we were forced to build new housing, because the bill doesn't specify that that new housing has to be affordable housing, as it currently stands, if we were forced to build new housing because we made it onto the list, in fact what that would do is drive the average Dunedin house price up. We did point that out. The Minister said he thought it was unlikely that they would get around to Dunedin in the 3 years that this bill is in effect. So there is no doubt there are more pressing markets, primarily Auckland, Christchurch, Tauranga and probably Queenstown.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Look, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just wanting to be sure. With this legislation, it can only be initiated from government, can't it? It can't be used by a developer or whatever as an argument why around issues to do with the freeing up of land that might not otherwise be available for development or that kind of thing. It can't be initiated at the local level. It can only be initiated at the central level. Is that correct?
Once you're on the schedule, then either we or the government can seek to make us a special housing accord territorial authority. If the government asks for it and we refuse, then the ministry will go ahead and do it over our heads.
Right, but
that's what the bill enables.
But a private individual couldn't take an action.
Not unless they convinced the government that we had a pressing need that we weren't responding to.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
So the submission's already been sent, and this is to ask for an endorsement.
Yes,
of what's been written.
the time frame that was given was particularly tight,
Yeah,
as is often the case with these things, and often we need to do this in light of some criticism on other submissions.
So if I think it's a very good submission, so well done. Especially the qualifying developments, you know, that these affordable houses may not in fact be affordable. I think you make that point very well on page 5.8, so well done on that. What's not mentioned in it, and I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity to make any follow-up comments or a secondary opportunity, probably there won't be, and in fact that by allowing these new developments to occur, it causes a draining effect. It causes a draining effect on infill or periphery areas, like periphery subdivisions or periphery small towns, and those places will not be attractive as you fill the need in a highly popular area. And I think that's a fundamental problem. Whether this happens in Auckland, it will affect everywhere else as it causes a draining effect. And I think that aspect is not particularly strong in here. So if there was any second opportunity to comment, it would be that comment that I'd be particularly keen to push.
I can't. I was going to ask that in a different way to make it a question, if that's right. Yeah. Hamish, is this one select committee does a question session or not? I can't recall what stage. It's not third reading or anything, so I can't recall being contacted.
My understanding is they're in hearings at the moment. So
that's correct.
Okay. Oh, Dave. It's happening now, so I presume that Dave or I are talking to that, and we can. I'll make sure that Dave's aware of that. He may be doing that while he's in Wellington.
Okay, well that'd be great. The other thing that I thought that could also be built into it is there's a very poor match between the identified need for affordable housing, which may occur in one area, and the provision of the housing land in another area, that they may not match. So there might be a need for affordable housing, but the actual provision of land may not actually make a good match. And I think that...
Again, asking that as a question, is that the idea here is that the government will make land available to match the demand. That is what this does. So if there is a demand proven, then they will say this land has to be made available. Whether they can require it to be at a certain price is the...
Yeah. I suppose my point is that I don't think that the legislation makes a particularly tight match between the area of need and the actual physical area which is freed up to address that need.
The legislation allows for the accord territorial local authority to work with the government to determine which areas of land should be turned into special housing accord areas. So it allows you to do that in partnership.
Yeah. Okay, anyone like to move that? I'm happy to move from the chair. Seconded, Councillor Hudson. Any discussion? Councillor Thompson?
Well, I just make one point. There are in New Zealand there are very few open avenues to corruption. This, in my view, certainly adds to the list of open avenues, because what it effectively means is that it provides an incentive for those who have land, who wish to sell it, and who do not have the ability to sell it because of zoning, to work with other people who may be able to make that happen. And before I get sued by anyone, I'm not suggesting for one moment that any of the current people who might make these decisions either are corrupt or would be corrupt or would even think corruptly. I'm simply making a general point that when we put this kind of power into one or two people's hands, we increase the likelihood of that becoming a more major part of our way of doing things. And so for obvious reasons, it disappoints me.
Thank you. But you're supportive of the motion?
I am.
Thank you.
Well, to the submission.
Yes, to the submission. No other discussion? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, Mr. Minima has kindly stayed behind to talk from notification under the chair, because he had to report on two things that Councillor Hudson brought up at the last meeting, or previous to that, I think. One is skateboarding, signage.
Madam Chair, I might do the easy one first. Skateboards, signage. We did a bit of an audit at the southern end of town, around Spatesbury, etc. We found quite a few signs were missing, and I think also some signs probably could be better located, so that's on our task list to rectify that in the next few months.
Thank you. And the other...
Plus the oxygen signage on the flyers. Murray Place, Dunedin. They're worn off.
Yeah, no, what I've done is, okay, what I did is I just did a sample. I didn't walk around the whole area, but based on what I saw, I thought, well, if that is typical of the whole cordon, then it's quite likely that there's a lot of signage missing elsewhere. So I've got someone else and she's going to sort all of that out for us.
Yep, thank you. And the other issue was crossings.
Pedestrian platforms and markings, in particular the Great King Street.
This was between Albion Lane and the New World.
Yes. This has come up a number of times. We've looked at it a number of times, and each time we have responded the same way, and we've said no. The reason for that is we've looked at all our crash records, and I mean, we do hear, you know, that there are near misses or there are the odd argument, but when we look at all the data that we have, it actually shows that it's working very well. The 3 crashes that have been reported, this is in the last 10 years, none of them occurred on the crossing. They were all adjacent to the crossing, you know, 20 metres away. Having said that, there are a number of raised platforms that are going to be constructed as part of the South Dunedin cycle network, and it has been highlighted, and it's extremely important that we actually make it quite clear to both the motorist, the cyclist and the pedestrian who has priority, and we will work through those details, signage and devices, etc., to make sure there's absolutely no confusion and we don't have any avoidable accidents.
Thank you. You've got a question or another?
A comment.
Comment. I'm not sure if the standing order's allowed that, but I'm going to let you anyway, Councillor Hudson.
Ron, there was some confusion because I raised the issue in relation to the signage that's been put in Hanmer, which says quite clearly on the footpath, pedestrians, please give way to motorists, and it appears to work very effectively. The minutes said Hamilton, and I understood you contacted Hamilton to try and find out. The issue is not just, I'm pleased you've commented on the South Dunedin ones, because those were the ones that Joe had commented on and asked us to look at, and I'm pleased you're going to address that. but there are the other pedestrian crossings, and just observe for yourselves anytime you're driving along George Street, where there are the marked curb protrusions and change in the asphalt, which pedestrians seem to think they have the right of way on. And the other really bad one is, which I see on a regular basis, is at the top of the Octagon where Stewart Street comes into the Octagon. And I'm often watching people trying to leap out of the way because they think that pedestrians have the right of way across there. And it just takes a simple statement on the curb, pedestrians, please give way.
I'd make a comment in passing that all drivers think they're right and all pedestrians think they're right.
Yes.
They may even be the same people. The problem on the Stewart Street one is too often people don't indicate.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Have you got another matter for notification under the chair?
On that too, seeing that we're commenting on it. I have seen near fisticuffs on that pedestrian crossing outside the Centre City Mall, I think it is Albion Place, with a taxi driver driving through and a member of the public thinking he had the right of way, and it was quite frightening, really, especially for the taxi driver, because this guy was a great big huge thing that was going to nearly thump him, and I thought, well, you know, and it's not the first time I've seen it, potential physical assaults like that. So, I mean, okay, it's good that nobody's actually had a crash yet, but that's not to say they're not going to, and I just think if we can do something simple with a little sign so people know what, you know, who has the right of way, then what's wrong with that? Just don't understand the reluctance to do it.
We can do skateboarding ones.
And
maybe.
I do have another thing to talk about. When
Okay, can I finish that at the moment, because I'll take those on board and we might discuss it again. What is your other matter under notification of the chair?
What's happening with the graffiti busters? Is this...
We're doing some work on that. There's been meetings with the Chamber of Commerce and our staff. We've taken it up from annual plan. We've reported to the last chair's meeting, and we're getting some work done. No necessary solutions immediately, but we've managed to. So, do you want to talk about that?
The various departments have graffiti contracts, and so the departments are meeting together. They haven't done this before. To talk about the contracts and the overlaps, making sure there's no gaps that fall down the middle, having a look at where we might need to make some decisions about how long we give before graffiti has to be removed. Things like getting rid of the effects of the graffiti, not just the graffiti itself. So simply painting over white graffiti that says someone's name with brown paint so that you can still read it is probably not a good enough response, that kind of thing. So just looking at that across the departments at the moment.
Well, what's happened to the group that was doing a really good job cleaning up?
As part of Task Force Green.
That contract's been extended.
The Task Force Green
temporarily.
Are still working.
Well,
we've got some funding to keep it going for a while we try and find some answers.
The public phone something says, I've some really bad graffiti on the place.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is get everybody to phone the CSA, and Adrian's taken an agreement
that the other day, and they said, sorry, you're a private person, pay for it yourself.
We don't take graffiti off private property, so council doesn't pay to take graffiti off private property. So in general. So they can have that discussion with the CSA. I'll check with Adrian, because I don't think a blanket no is the normal response they try and give, and I'll follow up.
Certainly not what we've been intimated. There are certain situations where people...
We can do it.
We can do it, but it has to go through a process, otherwise it would be misused.
It happened a couple of years ago, and it was quite a great big huge bit on our plaster wall, and we didn't know what to do with it, apart from didn't want to paint out the plaster, and we phoned them just to ask for advice, and they were great. They came around and removed it, and we made a donation, I think, to keep Dunedin beautiful.
There was an
But that group's not involved. Not doing it
they are. There is an there was a period where someone was no longer with the council briefly, and through the annual plan process, these issues have been highlighted, and we've done some temporary fixes looking for a long-term solution. So that is happening.
Well,
I will happily report back on what this said as part of the annual plan. Submissions we heard of from Keep Dunedin Beautiful.
Flash bright pink group going around Dunedin at the moment. That's
Thank you. Councillor Hudson.
Fluoridation. At the annual plan time, we had numerous.
It's not an issue on planning and environment. It's infrastructure services. Is that? I mean, I'm sorry, without wanting. I just want to check.
Well, I don't know. All I'm asking was I asked for how much it would cost to have a referendum on it at the time of the local body elections, and nobody's reported back yet.
That is, Sandy, I know, has done some work on that, and I'm surprised it hasn't come back, but I'll...
At the time of the annual plan, there was that request, and then it was subsequently overtaken by the council's resolution to seek direct discussion with the Ministry of Health, I think it is, in preference to that.
But I know that Sandy's done that